Hello and welcome back to Bicycle Legs and another edition of Favourite Albums of the Year. Today I'm going to be looking at my 10 favourite albums of 2023. As with last year, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be listing the albums in chronological order, but at the end I will reveal which one of these 10 albums is my favourite album of the year. So let's get right into it. The year started with a bang in January with this wonderful debut album, Get Real by CVC. Now I have Davey Gallagher to thank for this. Please do check out his Flicks and Picks YouTube channel if you haven't already subscribed there. It's a wonderful channel. This album is just a wonderful debut from this Welsh six-piece band. Really sort of retro 70s sound to it. If you like sort of bands like 10cc, Paul McCartney and Wings, even Steely Dan, there's influences there from all that, but they make it their own. They're not just the sum of their influences, they do go beyond that. Very witty songwriting as well. The lyrics are very interesting. I mean, there's one song here, Anogo. The first line of it is, last night I smoked all of the weed, all of my weed on my own. It's just wonderful. But so many great songs on here. It starts off with Hail Mary, which is a really good song. Winston, I love. The Anogo that I mentioned before. Sophie is great. Good Morning Vietnam on the beginning of side B almost has a bit of a disco feel to it, but it works really well. I love it. Music stuff is great. Album ends with American Ultra. All of the songs on this album are really, really good. If you haven't checked this album out, I definitely recommend going to your listening app of choice and giving this album a spin, because I think you'll really, really like it if you're into that sort of 70s pop rock kind of sound. It's really good. The next album we're going to have a look at was originally released this year on the 21st of April. Veteran band putting out the second album in 2 years after not having put anything out for like 20 years. And that is Rock Float by Jethro Tull. I actually like this one a little bit better than the Zealot Gene, although I really like the Zealot Gene. That was in my top 10 albums of 2022. This album I think is a little bit better. It's a little more cohesive. It's got a bit of a theme to it. It's got kind of pagan influences to the lyrics and that sort of thing. It's that very typical Jethro Tull sound that we're used to at this stage, with lots of flute, mixing of acoustic and electric guitars, little bits of keyboards here and there. But it's very much a vehicle for Ian Anderson and his flute and his lyrics. His voice obviously is not what it once was, but I think he uses what he has left with his voice very well on this album. And I think his almost whispery kind of vocals suit these songs. He's writing songs that suit the vocals that he has now. Velaspo, I'm going to mispronounce a lot of these titles, but the Ginging Gagap, All Father, Feathered Consort, The Perfect One, Trickster and the Mistletoe. I mean, reference to mistletoe there, it could be another addition to Jethro Tull's lengthy sort of list of Christmas songs, couldn't it? Or solstice songs, as it were. The Navigators, Guardian's Witch. There's a lot of really good music on this album. As I say, I think it's a step up even from the Zealot Gene, and I really like the Zealot Gene, so there you go. The next album we're going to have a look at was released on the 8th of May this year. It's the fourth album by this wonderful band from New York, and that is Everything Harmony by the Lemon Twigs. I won't go into too much detail in this because I did do a review of this with Peter Kerr on his channel Rock Daydream Nation. Please do go and check it out. I will leave a link to that video in the description. But suffice to say, I thought this is the best album. Sorry, I'll get it right in a minute. I thought this is the band's best album yet. Absolutely wonderful. I hate to use that dreaded M word, but this is a very mature release for them. It's going a bit beyond the sunshiny pop. That album cover has got a bit of a sepia tone to it, and the music has a bit of a sepia tone to it as well. It's not quite as brightly coloured and gaudy as some of their earlier music is, as much as I love that. But this is definitely a deeper, darker album. A lot of the lyrics are on the dark side. I mean, for goodness sake, there's a song on here called Every Day is the Worst Day of My Life. And it's a beautiful song. But it starts off with the gorgeous acoustic When Winter Comes Around. And you have In My Head, Corner of My Eye, Any Time of Day. What You Were Doing is a wonderful up-tempo song. What Happens to a Heart, Ghost Run Free is another great up-tempo song. And then the last couple of songs have a bit more of a hopeful tone after a bit of the sort of seriousness and darkness of the earlier parts of the album, with Everything Harmony and New to Me. Just a brilliant album. As I say, my favourite Lemon Twigs album thus far. The next album we're going to have a look at is another album by a veteran artist. It was released on the 19th of May this year, and it is Paul Simon's Seven Psalms. And what a great album this is. He was 81 when this album came out. He's 82 now. But it's incredible that an 81-year-old artist can do an album that's unlike anything else in his catalogue. This is an acoustic album. There's little to no percussion on it at all. It's almost like acoustic ambient music, and then the lyrics are sort of loosely based on the Psalms, as the title would suggest. Apparently the idea for the album and the lyrics came to him in a dream. Just an incredible, really different album for Paul Simon, especially from what he's been doing for the last sort of 30-40 years. Just amazing that so late in his career he could come up with something that is for him so groundbreaking. Can't speak well enough of this album. I mean, there's seven pieces, again, as the title would suggest. There's The Lord, My Love Is Like a Braid, My Professional Opinion, Your Forgiveness, Trail of Volcanoes, The Sacred Heart, and Wait. But it is very much, this album is meant to be listened to as sort of one continuous piece of music, as it were. Definitely well worth sitting down and listening to it in its entirety. The next album is the latest album by one of my favourite artists in the world. It was released on the 26th of May this year, and it is The Girl Is Crying in Her Latte by Sparks. Now, I was lucky enough to see Sparks not once but twice this year, as indeed I got to see the Lemon Twigs twice this year. I don't know if this album is quite as good as the previous two. I loved A Steady Drip Drip Drip, and I loved Hippopotamus. This album's really good though. It's more varied than those two albums. I think those two albums were going for a specific kind of sound, whereas this one, Sparks have done so many different styles of music over their career, and this one sort of dips in and takes a little bit from all these different sounds that Sparks have done over their long and storied career. I mean, their first album came out the year I was born, 1971. So, you know, they've got a lot to choose from. The title track, The Girl Is Crying in Her Latte, real sort of electronic song. Then you get Veronica Lake, beautiful. Again, electronic, but much quieter, more atmospheric than The Girl Is Crying in Her Latte, which is quite sort of loud and abrasive. Nothing is as good as they say it is more in their sort of rock style. Really love it. Escalator, wonderful track. Again, going for the electronics, but again, like Veronica Lake, more sort of atmospheric and that sort of thing. But there's also wonderful songs like We Go Dancing, The Mona Lisa's Packing, Leaving Late Tonight, A Love Story, Take Me for a Ride, and now a great concert closer for them is the song Gee, That Was Fun. It's a great album. As I say, maybe not quite as good as the last two albums, but that's only because those two albums were highlights of their career, which is saying something for a band that's done 26, 27 albums, whatever it is. Brilliant album, definitely worth checking out. Now, the next album I don't think will come as any surprise to people who've watched the channel that this would be in my top 10 for the year. It was released on the 29th of September this year, and that is the Harmony Codex by Steven Wilson. Now, maybe people were expecting a more rock album after the very sort of electronic album that came before it, because he'd done Porcupine Tree in between. But I think he got the hard rock and the prog and that sort of thing out of his system with the Porcupine Tree. This still has definitely proggy elements, but it's definitely more keyboard based, more electronic, although there are sort of more rock tracks. In fact, he kind of alternates between them. I mean, if you look at the first three tracks, Inclination, very electronic. But then What Life Brings is a more sort of a rock and roll sort of thing, not a Porcupine Tree hard, heavy sort of thing. But it's a more rock thing with guitars and acoustic drums and all that sort of thing. But then you get the very electronic, experimental economies of scale. But you've also got Impossible Tightrope, you've got Rock Bottom, Beautiful Scarecrow. If you haven't seen the film clip for Beautiful Scarecrow on YouTube, go and watch it. It is heart-wrenching, absolutely wonderful. The title track, the Harmony Codex, really sort of eerie and electronic and wonderful. Time Is Running Out, Actual Brute Facts, and Staircase. It's a great album top to bottom. I mean, Steven Wilson for me's never done a dud album. I'm a unabashed Steven Wilson fanboy. Love all that he does. I love his Porcupine Tree stuff, No Man, IEM. I even like some of the Bass Communion stuff, although that's a little outside my wheelhouse. And his solo stuff, obviously. Absolutely genius. The next album we're going to have a look at was released on the 27th of October, and it is Bauhaus Staircase by OMD, Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark. Wonderful album cover. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Architecture and Morality. And musically, I mean, this has a lot in common with that sort of era of Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark, that sort of Architectures and Morality, Dazzle Ships even. It's got a bit of that experimental feel to it. And definitely those sort of first two albums, the self-titled and Organization. It's definitely in the wheelhouse of those four albums. And I think that's what they've been going for the last couple of albums that they've done. This one is really, really good though. I mean, the title track is wonderful. Anthropocene. There's definitely a bit of a social commentary or political kind of slant to the lyrics here. Look at You Now, GEM, Where We Started. It's all really good. Evolution of Species, coming in with that Anthropocene as well, that sort of thing. There's a song called Kleptocracy. I mean, it's a great album. It's that sort of early sound, but it's using some more modern keyboardy sounds. It's not real old analog synths for all of it. Some of it is more modern sounding synthesizers and that sort of thing. And they blend really, really well. And it gives it definitely leans into that early OMD sound, but it brings it into the modern by using those more modern instruments and that sort of thing. And I think it's a great blend, works really well. I loved their last album too, The Punishment of Luxury. This album's right up there with that one. Love it, love it, love it. The next album we're going to have a look at was released on the 17th of November this year. It is a wonderful album, and that is Theatre of the Absurd presents C'est La Vie by Madness. This is probably the best Madness album since The Liberty of Norton Folgate. I'm not the only one who said that. I'm sure there's been thousands of other people who've said that. And that's not to say that the other albums in between those two haven't been good. They have, absolutely. But this one's really, it's got that Kincksian feel. It's got that old school sort of two-tone sound to some of it. It's got a bit of a music hall kind of thing to it. More on music hall later when we look at the next album. But Yeah, I mean, I won't go through all the tracks because there's a lot of them. It's a double album, but it's got Martin Freeman doing sort of introductions to various sort of Act One, Act Two, Act Three sort of thing. It's kind of set up as a play. It's a wonderful album. All the band members are contributing to the songwriting. Suggs, he's got a slightly lower voice these days, but he's still got a really wonderful singing voice. The rest of the band are in fine form. There's plenty of sort of strings and horns and additional bits and pieces that you expect from sort of Modern Madness, especially. Absolutely well worth checking out. Go and have a look at it if you haven't already. The next album we're going to look at is Absolute Music Hall, and deliberately done so. It's the new album by Joe Jackson. It was released on the 24th of November, and that is Max Champion in What a Racket. So the whole conceit of this album is that Joe Jackson had rediscovered these 100-year-old songs by this guy called Max Champion. And they were basically music hall songs. And he's sort of redone them and re-recorded them. And but obviously, I mean, they're songs written by Joe Jackson. The lyrics are kind of made to sound old-timey, but also made to be very much referential to the times we live in here and now. It's an incredible album. And I mean, it's not what you would have expected from Joe Jackson, unless you know Joe Jackson really well and you know the fact that he's gone all over the musical map in his career. If you only know him from Stepping Out and Is She Really Going Out With Him and those sort of hits, you're probably not expecting a music hall album from Joe Jackson. But if you know Joe Jackson's catalogue really well, and you know he's done classical, he's done jump blues, he's done, electronic music, he's done all sorts of things throughout his career. Jazz, soul, it's just, there's Joe Jackson again, going in another direction. For us sort of hardcore Joe Jackson fans, we may not have been expecting this particular album, but we weren't surprised by it either. Why is a great song. This Sporting Life is witty and hilarious, absolutely wonderful. Dear Old Mum, Monty Monday is Maltese. The title track, What a Racket, is wonderful. The Bishop and the Actress, again, real sort of wink, wink, nod, nod sort of thing. Think of the Show, A Thespian's Lament, Health and Safety, Worst Things Happen at Sea. It's a really great concept. Absolutely love it. And then the last album we're going to look at, my 10th pick, is going to be the most recent album. It was released on the 1st of December this year, so it's only been out for just under a month, and that is I.O. by Peter Gabriel. I don't have the vinyl yet. I'll probably get both Bright Side and Dark Side mix on vinyl eventually, but I wanted to get this one because this has the 2 CDs of the Bright Side and the Dark Side mixes, and then it's got the inside mix, which is the surround sound mix. And this album, as well as the Steven Wilson album, absolutely are made to be listened to in surround sound. So when I was only buying one copy of this to start with, I wanted to start with the one with the surround sound mix. And I'm so glad I did, because the surround sound mix is sumptuous. This album is a big step up from his last album of original material, which was 21 years ago with Up. That's my least favourite Peter Gabriel album. I've done a Peter Gabriel ranking, obviously not including I.O. I'll leave a link to that in the description. This is a big step up from Up for me. I know Up has its defenders, and I don't hate that album at all, but it just was my least favourite Peter Gabriel album. This is a really good album. It's a bit more lively, it's a bit more up-tempo, at least in certain parts, than Up was. And the songs are just so incredibly detailed. You can hear why this album took him 20 years or more to make. I mean, some of these tracks he was working on as early as 1995, which is even before Up came out. So he's been working on this for a very, very long time. But so many of these tracks are good. Panopticon, The Court, Playing for Time. The title track I.O. is just absolutely wonderful. Four Kinds of Horses, Road to Joy, So Much is great. Olive Tree I really, really like. Love Can Heal, Live and Let Live. There's just so many good songs on this album. There isn't a dud. It's a wonderful album. If you haven't checked it out, I actually made a conscious decision when he was releasing all these tracks, like one every couple of weeks, with the new moon and the full moon. He was releasing a bright side or a dark side mix of one of these tracks. I went out of my way not to listen to them, even though it was so tempting, because I wanted to hear the album as an album when it came out, and I wanted it to be fresh to my ears. And again, I'm really glad I did that, because I think it ended up being a wonderful way to experience the album for the first time, rather than having heard these tracks individually. Anyway, that is my top 10 albums of 2023. Now, I did promise you I would choose a favorite album of 2023. And my favorite album of 2023 is Everything Harmony by the Lemon Twigs. Just an incredible album. Please go and listen to it. Please go and check out the review that I did with Peter Kerr on Rock Daydream Nation of this album, because we go into it in quite a lot of detail. And I've put up 3 tracks from concerts that I went to of the Lemon Twigs on my channel. Please go and have a listen to those if you want to get an idea of what these songs sound like live, because live they're a wonderful act. And it's interesting because one of the tracks I filmed on a big stage at a festival in Adelaide, and then the other 2 I filmed when I saw them in this tiny little club in Fortitude Valley in Brisbane. So real sort of contrast between the big stage and the little stage. But they're 3 songs that are all from this album. So if you want to get a good feel for this album, check out those 3 live tracks that I filmed, and tell me what you think. But please let me know in the comments, what are your favorite albums of 2023? Which albums do you think I should have included? Which of these ones that I did pick are your favorites? Please do let me know in the comments. I absolutely love reading the comments. Please do like, share and subscribe. It really does help the channel out. If you're new to the channel, please go and have a look at some of my other videos. I have everything playlisted, so if you want to look at some of my studio albums ranked shows, I have a playlist for those. If you want to have a look at some of my favorite albums of all time, I have a playlist for those. Or if you want to see my earlier favorite albums of the year from 2021 and 2022, I have a playlist for that as well. Also, if you want to see my appearances on other people's channels, such as the aforementioned Rock Daydream Nation, I have a playlist for those too. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm at bicyclelegs on Instagram and Twitter, and I have a dedicated bicyclelegs Facebook page. Please come and give those all a follow and join in the conversation. I'd really love to have you there. Have a wonderful 2024, everybody. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.